first, Carey, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I know that this particular subject is rough for you. I'd like to go back to the beginning.
Okay.
When's the first time that you took notice of Kelvin?
Well, Kelvin Kiptum, I was aware, I'd heard of a young man in Kenya that was doing some amazing things in training and was impressing a lot of the athletes that had already been established. But I watched a video of him run in Valencia in his debut marathon where he ran under 2:02, 2:01:53, going off memory here, which was world-leading time in his first effort, and amazing second half of the race. And then I saw him in person in London and saw how amazing he was in person. So I was aware his reputation preceded him a little bit, word of mouth, and then Valencia, and then seeing him in person, being a few feet from him in full flight, that's when I knew he was a very special individual.
I've been watching a lot of running videos with him, and a lot of the runners have said this guy's whole makeup is perfect. And if you watch him run the last 5 miles of Chicago, you see a guy that has the perfect form and balance. When you talk to people about him, when you talk to coaches, to experts about Kelvin, what did they say made him a special talent?
Well, obviously, his performances, but what he had done in training, how focused he was in training, how he really was able to and his coaches, his managers, really his training and his direction, what his goals were, where he wanted to be on the horizon, just fit really well. And he just had it at such a young age. His preparation, his mental ability, the coaching, and how he prepared. He really knew what he needed to do, and I think that was evident in Chicago.
I'd even heard that he was running distances that most distance runners don't do in training.
Sure. In order to do things historically in a competition, you have to do things historically in preparation. And in order to do what he does, there has to be a certain amount of luck, not on his side, but the training has to come together in an amazing way, which it did. Little things like travel, getting here from Kenya, air travel. Sometimes there's a flight delay or you're stuck in an airport, which can throw your routine off. Everything aligned in an amazing way. And then, Marathon Sunday morning, the weather was about as perfect as it can get. And the truly great ones seized the moment. And I think he realized, if you talk to some of the athletes that have run in Chicago, they may say, you can ask them, how many times did you get in, peak performance and had perfect weather? And someone will say never, in very illustrious careers, or they never had a day where it was perfect. The weather may have been perfect, but their training didn't go right, or there was an issue with everything aligned really well. And just to reiterate, the great ones seize the moment.
How did you get to know him? Like, what were the things that you learned about him as you're getting ready for Chicago and his record-breaking run?
I had just a short period of time meeting him very briefly in London. I was just, when you're around someone that's charismatic or has an amazing personality, you can feel it. And he was just a very sweet, unassuming guy. And I hit it off with his manager, and his coach was the same way. But, I just saw how he interacted with other people. People, he would be in the lobby of the hotel and somebody would stop him, or he'd be, I could see him walking down the street and he took the time to interact with them or take a picture or whatever. Even though he was on the front end of his career, his reputation preceded who he was or what he looked like or anything like that. He was really new to North America. And I just saw the chemistry that he had, and it was, so that's what I felt from him, and seeing him interacting. And then when the press conferences or things that we did need him to appear at, he was always 15 minutes early, and he was the first one to show up and the last one to leave.
When you were here at the Score, Dan and we had talked to you about the race, and you were excited about the race. You had looked at the weather and like, I think we got a good one. I think we got a good one. And I remembered you. It's part of the reason that I wanted to talk with you is I remembered how excited you were for his run in it. What was it that led you to believe that this could be a record-breaking, a special moment for him and for the marathon?
Well, I live a charmed life. I've done this for quite a while, and I've gotten to know some amazing athletes and work with amazing athletes. If you look at going back to Joan Samuelson, who set the American record in Chicago and then won the first Olympic gold medal in Los Angeles in the women's marathon, and Steve Jones, who'll be with us, who was our first world record holder and did some amazing things. Won New York and won London. He was in his era. He was the best. Khalid Kanuchi. Sammy Wanjuro, Constantina Dita, who won Chicago and won an Olympic gold medal, Dina Castor, who won Chicago and London, and Paula Radcliffe, who won Chicago and set the world record. I've been very fortunate to be around amazing athletes. I'm talking about the women, but on the men's side, Eliud Kipchoge, his first major was in Chicago, so I had worked with him. Kenessa Bekele, who's the all-time Olympic medal winner in the 5 and the 10,000 meters on the track. And just being around them and watching them train and watching them perform and compete, he was just above all those. I had never seen anyone like him. It was like he floated. It was like it's effortless. And the truly great ones, they do that. And I knew Chicago. Chicago, there was such a history and tradition. He was keenly aware of that. And we've had so many Kenyans that have come to Chicago and perform well. I think that he's one of these athletes that taps into the history and the legacy and the chemistry of the athletes that came before him. And he feels like he's the guy that's going to take it to the next level. He's a proud Kenyan, great family man, father. So I think all those things he used. And people... I think he brought the city together. I think that his performance really resonated with everyone. So it was just and it was just a different level. And I will tell you, I think he would have been the face of marathon running. I think he would have been an individual that made marathon running a household name. I think he would have no problem going to New York or Boston or running on these challenging courses and running away there. So he just had it all. He was amazing. And so early in his career, so he had so much left. He had just barely scratched the surface. So, those are the things. Those are the things when I think about him now, and I look back, is what he did and how special he was, but what he could have done.
The unlimited potential. I think the entire running world has mourned his life, but also the potential and taking this thing to the next step because he was so young in his career.
Sure, and if you go back and watch his performance in Chicago, I think he was even tapping the brakes a little bit. I don't think he really let everything out. I mean, he ran a magnificent second half of the race, and he did it the old-fashioned way. He just put it on his shoulders. Our pacers, they were gone. Another one of our athletes went up to help him a little bit, but I mean, the second half of the course, it was all him. And we had guys behind him that were very, very talented athletes. We had an Olympic medalist. We had two-time Boston champion, and he didn't even give him a glance. I mean, he was racing against history. He was racing against the history of this event, the history of the sport, and the clock. And he did it the old-fashioned way.
I'm taken aback when I watched the last 5 miles of the race of how, and you see it especially in the last 2, how he took from the crowd, how the energy of the people of Chicago helped to push him forward. And you see, like, okay, now that kick, that speed kick is starting to happen with him. For someone who loves this city and this event, what was it like for you to see him connect with the city and the city connect with him?
Well, I think that people that are casual observers of the marathon were drawn to the marathon because of him. I think the text that I got, the messages that we received, being stopped on the street where people would say, hey, I watched the marathon. It was the first one I've lived in Chicago for 25 years. what an amazing performance. I live on Clark Street. A world record was set on my front door. So I think he connected with so many people. His personality. Laurence, this is a great sporting city. We know that. I mean, if you think about the commitment that our fans have and to our traditional sports teams and the energy that this city has around the Bears or the Bulls or the excitement of our baseball teams, although we've had a challenging year in some cases, but I don't know any more loyal fans or sports fans than the city of Chicago. And he crossed over to those fans, casual observers of the marathon that pay attention, but all of a sudden he brought a whole different group of people out and connected with it. So we owe him that, and I think he would have done that in any event that he competed in.
This moment right here, he crosses the finish line. You catch him. He runs into your arms. The joy on your face, the smile on his face. Yeah. What do you remember about this?
I just remember telling him that, saying, "Hey, Kelvin, you're the world record holder. You've done it. You've broke Kipchoge's record." And I don't think there was a physical. I think there was an emotional. I think he was overtaken by the emotion of it. But he immediately gathered his thoughts, and he asked me where Khalid Kanuchi was. And I said, he's in the bleachers just 50 yards down here. And he immediately spun around and went back. The last individual, the last man to break the world record in Chicago was Khalid Kanuchi, and he wanted to recognize him. So I think that shows his awareness of the sport, and he wanted to recognize the last man that broke the world record in Chicago. It was special, really special.
When you got news of the car accident, what were you feeling?
Oh, wow. It was, I was the first one that was contacted. Our Nike is our wonderful sponsor, and they had heard that there was an accident, and there was a possibility that Kelvin was involved. And then this was early afternoon, late afternoon in Chicago. And then I got a call that it was Kelvin's car, and the coach and him were in the car, and that there was another athlete in the car. And then the third call was that he had died at the scene, Kelvin and his coach. So shock and disbelief. It was difficult to process. It's almost like you're like, wait a minute, is this a dream? I'm waiting for it. So I just sat there for a little bit. I was the only one at my house at the time, and it was like losing a family member, or losing someone that you've grown really, really close to. In the short period of time that we knew him. And then I reached out to some of our team, Tracy Wilson, who manages our elite athlete program, and Alex Sawyer, who's our communication. And I would say Tracy, I called her and said, there's been a horrible accident. Kelvin has died in an accident, and she just hung up on me. She didn't. And then 20 minutes later, she said, "What did you say to me? What was?" She had kind of blocked it out. So it was tough. It still is.
How are you mourning this? Like how have you tried to work through this because of what he meant to the Chicago Marathon, what the Chicago Marathon means to you, what he meant to you, and what you meant to him? How are you working through this?
Well, I think for us is celebrating his life. Obviously tragic incident, and heartbreaking, and it still hurts. Our team is still affected by it. But what we'll do this year is just celebrate his life. We are all of our elite athletes that wear a bib will wear a Kelvin Kiptum mark on it, his name and his time. We'll recognize him at the start of the race. We have created a tribute to him at the expo when people enter the expo with his performances and what he did in Chicago. Obviously, our broadcast partner on the TV side of it is doing a great tribute to him. Obviously, what we're doing with the score here, recognizing him. Our volunteers, all of our participants will be handing out a mark sticker that if they want to affix it to their bib. Our general participants, and obviously we're going to celebrate his memory. I think that's what he would have wanted us to do. It's I'm looking at the field, and we have some very good athletes as we always do, but there's a big hole there. There's no doubt about it. There's there's somebody missing there, and it'll take us a while to move away from that and to find an athlete or an athlete that aspires to be like Kelvin. I think hopefully there's a young man out there somewhere that looks at what Kelvin did and said, I want to be like him, like he looked at the athletes that came before him. I mean, he was keenly aware of that and keenly grateful to all the athletes that had done what they had done before. So he still has a training group. There has been a foundation for his family and for the training group that he supports. Even at his young age, he was supporting about 20 other athletes in Kenya with his support and his prize money. That will continue. We're working with his manager and Nike, and then also there's people have the opportunity to support the foundation in his memory.
Yeah, I meant to ask about that obviously he's a Chicago sports legend, but the country of Kenya is mourning this too. So I'm glad that there is still that connection where he gets to continue that legacy on of trying to help others and have them be a part of the world that he was a part of.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So we'll continue with that. I mean, he'll be part. There's been 6 world records set in Chicago over the years. He was the 6th and most recent one. So if anything, he put Chicago front and center. Even myself, I think I kind of started to lull into be thinking, well, maybe it is Berlin. Maybe that's where it is. I mean, the last world record was Bridget Kosgei, and then he put us front and center again. He sent a message to everybody that Chicago was still, if not the fastest, one of the fastest places to run in the world. So I think there'll be young athletes that'll come behind him that are coming here in 12 days to go after it. So that competitive spirit and that energy will live on. I think the athletes that are going to be competing on Sunday, October 13, are going to carry that energy and that memory with them and get after it.
One last thing. What's something that you hope people take from the life of Kelvin Kiptum?
You know, he didn't put any restraints on himself. He didn't put any limitations on himself. I mean, he was a sublimely talented athlete, and he used that ability and that athleticism to express himself. And I think we got more out of it than he did. I mean, he obviously the financial side of it. I mean, his bonuses and were fantastic for him. But I mean, what lives on is that a young man that came to a city for the first time and created history, and that's what we'll remember. And the short time that we really knew him was how balanced he was, how approachable he was, and what a personally humble guy he was. And that's what we'll take with us.